Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Champions of Self Visual Podcast. I'm Ben Eden, your host, and I'm excited to welcome today Dustin Rivenbark. He and I met recently, and I'm so excited to hear from him because I think he has a great story and some great things to teach us today with a fantastic inspirational message. So, Dustin, how are you?
Man, I'm good. Great to be here, Ben. How are you doing?
So great.
All right.
Dustin, let's get started by hearing more about who you are and what you do.
All right. So my name is Dustin Rivenbark, and I am, people ask me, okay, what do you do, Dustin? All right. And so I am a youth pastor / evangelist, life coach, author, speaker, just all around dedicated to helping people overcome obstacles and become the best version of themselves. And so I use a lot of my trials, hardships, scars, and all of that in order to help people overcome theirs. And so that's, in a nutshell, what I do. If you can figure that out, then you tell me, and I'll tell you what I do.
Good. All right, Dustin, let's jump right in because you have mentioned a story of yours.
Yes.
And I think it'll be a great segue into our topic today of You Are Good Enough. So let's hear your story.
Okay, so me, man, I was basically my mother was a drug addict. She was addicted to pain medication. And so my dad, he worked offshore. He worked 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off on drilling rigs, man. I say I basically lived out of a suitcase growing up. My parents were divorced. And so I'd live 2 weeks with my mom, and then my dad would come home from offshore and I would live 2 weeks with my dad. And so this kind of went on, through the years, back and forth, and living life with my mom the way she was, we moved around a lot. And so that caused a lot of issues with different schools, having to go to different communities, different neighborhoods, in between houses and trailers and campers and all this different stuff. And then my dad would come in and that would just wreak that much more chaos or weirdness into the play, having to go there and figure out how to navigate school. And so fast forward into my teenage years, I'd have to say that I naturally gravitated towards the harder crowd, the rougher crowd that just kind of accepted me as who I am, so to speak, I guess. And they were the first ones to reach out and say, hey, come with us, and that led to a lifestyle of addiction and troubled teenage years and just being all around stupid. And so fast forwarding into the later part of my teenage years, man, I found myself jobless, hopeless. I was living with my mother. My dad had moved to Texas at the time. And I found myself pretty desperate. And I remember calling up my dad and I said, hey, man, you got to get me out of here. And my dad then heard the sound of a hungry man. And look, you can do something, Ben, with a hungry man, right? Like at that point, you can do something with this guy. I didn't ask, how much money am I going to make? Can you get me a job? All of it. I said, you got to get me out of here. And so he reached out to some people that he knows on drilling rigs, and I got an interview. Then I spent 10 and a half years of the best years of my life. Now, some of the hardest years of my life, but some of the best years nonetheless. And that was my identity, right? I went from all of that to like bleeding black oil through my veins, like the oil field, like that's who I was, and that was my identity. And then in steps Jesus, man, and my faith. And so it radically changed me, radically transformed my life. And so about 5 years ago, the bottom fell out of the oil field industry and 200,000 jobs were lost. Mine was one of them.
Wow.
And I was finally at home, no job, had just bought a house, My wife was pregnant and didn't know what I was going to do. On top of all that, we find out my daughter has Potter's syndrome, which means that she's going to be born without kidneys or a bladder. She's not going to make it. And so we're hearing words like termination, all of these different terms, abortion. And we decided to carry her as long as God would sustain her, man. And I went into ministry shortly after we lost Callie Grace. We had to go in and take Callie Grace 1 month shy of full term. So we were right there, and she passed away inside the womb. Ben, man, that left me going into ministry already kind of foggy, kind of faded, you know, and I go into ministry and I'm entrusted over 80 kids, and I'm trying to navigate that, but I met some of the best people you'll ever meet. I got to minister to and be ministered to by some of the best people you'll ever meet. But shortly after that, man, my mother passed away from a drug overdose. A drug addiction took her life. And then 2 months after that, I lost my grandmother that practically helped raise me, one of the greatest women I've ever known. It's through seeing death at the beginning of life, middle age, end of life, I kind of came to the conclusion, brother, we only get one shot at this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this side of heaven, Ben, this is it. Like we only get one shot at this thing called life, man. And I just want to say, like, what are you doing with it? Like, what are you going to do with it? And so that's kind of my story. That's kind of my message is finding hope when everything seems hopeless, man.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, man.
My goodness, you've had a lot of learning experiences, right? Gone through a
Yes.
lot, but you've come out stronger, haven't you?
Absolutely, man. And from it, I fell in love with the book of Joshua, and I wrote my book, Courage and Redemption, the 6 key battle principles from the story of Joshua. And in this book, I basically laid the roadmap to freedom from chaos, from hopeless to hopeful, right? From victim to victory. And so through those 6 battle principles, it changed my life. I applied them to my life, and I still use that today. These experiences have changed me in a major way, but they've also made me who I am, Ben. You know, and those scars, man, those scars, like I have a podcast and it's called Scar, and I abbreviate. It's an abbreviation for Seeking Courage and Redemption, because that's what scars do, man. Like they hurt, they're there, they never go away, but we can still see courage and redemption.
Right. Now, this is so huge, and I love how it just goes with the title. Somebody could be listening to this and say, "My goodness, Dustin went through so many things: death, addiction, hard things, and he's telling us that you are good enough." Wouldn't he think that, oh my goodness, he has scars, he's not good enough? Did any of those thoughts ever pass through your mind, Dustin?
Oh, Ben, yes, man. Absolutely. Like, still to this day, you battle insecurity. So I want to take you back to a time. I remember, I don't know how old I was, Ben, but I was playing baseball as a young boy, like Dixie Youth Baseball or whatever. And I was always pretty late getting picked up. But this day, I was the last kid there, and my mom never showed up. She forgot to come pick me up, and I remember the coach having to call my grandmother, take me to my grandmother's house, and all of that. And I couldn't understand that. It didn't make sense to me why all the other parents came to pick them up and this and that, and it just didn't make sense. And I'm 36 years old, Ben, and I still remember that today. You know, like I said, these scars, they don't go away. They stick with you. But you have to learn to take the tools that we're given in this life and really use them to propel us forward, to shoot us forward. It's kind of like a bow and arrow. Like the arrows got to be pulled back before it can be projected forward. You can You are good enough. Why? Because you were created in the Imago Dei. You were created in the image of God. You have a plan and a purpose for your life. Listen, 99% of your problems stare back at you in the mirror. All right? But 100% of the solution also stares back at you in the mirror, realizing not through your power, not through your might, but realizing you're created in the image of God, man. In the Imago Dei, that's your answer, man.
I love it. I was hoping to hear that today.
Yeah, man.
Here's another question for you. Let's imagine one of these young adults, somebody who's listening today is saying, yeah, Dustin, I know. I've been taught that I was created in the image of God. I understand that I'm supposed to have that kind of potential. But here I am doing my best, struggling every day to either find and be successful in a relationship or be accepted by my friends or do something good with my life, whatever it is that I'm striving towards. And I am fighting these feelings of it's not working because I'm not good enough, or it's not working, therefore I must not be good enough. So why try?
Okay, that's a great question. And what I really want to say to someone that may be feeling that or standing in that deep pit and not know the way out, I want to take you to my first battle principle, which is preparation. And so I think preparation, and what's really cool about the 6 battle principles that I've learned from the story of Joshua is that they kind of overlap each other. You're always in one or more season of these 6 key battle principles. And number 1 is preparation. Look, man, it can take a lifetime to overcome a lifetime of abuse. Right? It can take a lifetime to overcome 10s or 20 years of drug addiction. Yeah, man. So it may take counseling. It's going to take much scripture, meditation, prayer, devotion, and all of that. We must prepare for the battles ahead. We must prepare for the journey ahead. And it's not easy, man. It's not easy at all. But through the grace and love and strength of Jesus Christ, some of my darkest days, right, were in our weakness, he is strong. Some of my strongest days were spent beside a casket, Ben. I can't even explain it, but through my daughter, through my mother and my grandmother, I had a feeling of God is with me, man. God is holding me up through this. He is Jehovah Jireh. He is the provider. Like my strength came in the moment I needed it most. Now, it doesn't mean that I didn't have dark days and dark nights. Of course I did. But when I needed God, he was there, brother. He was there. And so through this preparation phase, it leads me into obtaining spies. If you don't mind, I want to explain what I mean by that. And obtaining spies means just surrounding yourself with life givers, truth holders. See, Joshua sent 2 people into the land of Canaan. But now Joshua was one of 2 people out of 12 that Moses sent into the promised land. And only 2 came back with a message of hope, that one of them being Joshua, that we can go in, that we can defeat the giants, that God is good enough, that God is big enough, right? I think Joshua learned something off of that because he sent 2. I think he learned that it's not the quantity of people speaking into my life, but the quality of people speaking into my life.
Very good.
I want to say to that person right now, you've got to prepare. You have to hear me that nothing in this life is going to come easy, right? This is tough, okay? But it's building and it's stacking and it's molding you for the journey ahead. And you have to surround yourself. You have to obtain spies, I say. You have to get those truth holders, those life givers. And then we got to cross the Jordan. That's battle principle number 3. Joshua had to take his people across the Jordan, man. And so that Jordan for you is whatever obstacle you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it could be eviction. It could be addiction, lust, pornography, whatever. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is that has you thinking you're not good enough, we have to face it, and we have to cross that Jordan. We have to take that step into the promised land, which is all that God has for us. All right, in this life, that's our promised land. And the only way to do that is battle principle number 4, defeating the enemy. Recognizing it's not me who fights, but Christ who fights inside of me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then after we realize that, and we win some battles and we lose some battles, we can go in and claim our inheritance, which is not a handout. I can look back at my scars and realize nothing came easy. This was tough. Okay. But I claim my inheritance, which is all that God has for me. And then battle principle number 6, last one, I'll get off my soapbox for a second, is living your legacy, man. There's a date we're born. There's a date we're going to die. Inside those 2 dates is that dash, man, our life. What do you want said at your eulogy? I want to live every day as if I'm living for my eulogy, man. Like, I don't care about social status and GPA. Yes, they're all important, but I want people to say that was a man, right? And he loved people, and he put Jesus first.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You put a lot of thought into that, hence a book, hence speaking.
Yeah,
so thank you for teaching us all that.
Yeah, man.
That's fantastic. And this kind of principle is close to home with me of you have to have God help you and realize that God will help you. And you shouldn't try to do it alone. I also loved that you mentioned that you win some battles and you will lose some battles.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean you should beat yourself up. And that doesn't mean all of a sudden it means you're not good enough, right?
Right.
None of those are true, although one of the voices trying to talk to you will say that, and that's of the devil, right? They'll say, oh, you should have known better. God's fighting with you, and now you disappointed him, and now you are a disappointment, aren't you? Right. And then you just keep battling yourself instead of battling the real enemy.
So you're exactly right. And so Joshua, okay, he was known at, you can tell I don't like Joshua, right? But so Joshua, I love Joshua. And so he was known as Joshua, like he was the warrior, right? He was mighty Joshua, larger than life. He took all those Israelites, he took them into the promised land. He defeated one of the biggest battles, Jericho, you know, like he was the man. And leading up to the battle of Jericho, we see a prayerful mindset. We see this mindset in Joshua that comes humbly before God. God tells him, take your shoes off, for the place you're standing is holy. And Joshua does that. And it's just an honor and awe of God. But I think Joshua he stepped outside of that. And Joshua almost got out. He got out of that prayerful mindset. And when he became Joshua, he stepped into a land called Ai. And he got his tail handed to him. And he lost the battle of Ai because he did not consult with God first and get the direction and get the vision for the battle ahead. Afterwards, we don't see him fold up and quit. We don't see him go home and cry. We don't see him run back across the Jordan. We see him go back into that prayerful mindset. He simply recognizes that he fell short and he approaches the throne of God. And then he receives the blessing and goes in and stomps a mud hole in Ai. And so that's what's beautiful, is that God is not giving up on you. He's waiting on you. He's waiting on you to come forward with a bold expectation that he's going to pull you out of that pit.
Mm-hmm. Because what does he always think of us in regards to our title today? What does he always think of us?
He always thinks that we are champions of ourselves. We are good enough.
Exactly.
And so with this, guys, listen, you've got to understand that you are created for a purpose. Bro, you are created with a plan and a purpose for your life. I don't care what that person said to you, did to you, what you went through, what insecurities you have, and all this. I want to stand in the gap right now and apologize to you. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry, daughter. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry, sister, father, mother, friend. I didn't know that was going to hurt you, right? I didn't know what I was doing was going to affect you that bad. Some of you just need to hear that. No, I'm not the actual perpetrator, but I want to stand in that gap for you. You need to hear those words. I love you. Me. I love you. But more important than that, there's a God in heaven. There's a God in heaven who created the heavens and the earth, who breathes stars into existence, man, that wants a relationship with you. Like, can you really, we can't even grasp that with our finite minds. Like, what do you mean you breathe stars into existence? You know, the very hairs on my head or lack thereof. And you want a relationship with me? Like, wow, and so it's just awesome, man.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I'm going to kind of repeat what you said in a different way.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come back to all of your inspirational thoughts on you are good enough.
Cool.
So I liked how you began with prepare. And then you said something about gather your spies, right? There
Yeah.
you go. And what I heard there was be careful who is talking to you, what voices you listen to, right? And then we talked about what the devil says. He'll say, yeah, you made a mistake. You are a mistake. And if we believe that, then it just puts us down into a pit, a spiral. That is easy to do if we remain alone. Another lie that the devil will tell us is, you did what you knew you shouldn't have done. You did it again after you said you wouldn't do it. And he'll continue to tell you these things. And if you stay alone, then it'll just keep beating you up and you will turn and start fighting yourself. But what I loved about your principle, first of preparation, is to say, hey, if this keeps happening, then let me prophesy. Let me look to the future a little bit. Let me prepare and say, well, if it's always in the afternoons because I'm alone and I'm bored and I'm tired and I haven't eaten yet or whatever it is, if it always happens at that time, maybe I can prepare for it. So tomorrow at that same time, what am I going to do to make sure that this does not happen, that I am prepared to not make this mistake or not take this action, whatever that is making me feel bad? Then the other thing that we are doing right this moment, and that helps me so much, is what voices are you listening to? It's the principle of reaching out and connecting, because if you're listening to an inspirational material like Dustin here, that is bringing positive voices into your mind. You are created in the image of God. He does love you. You are enough. And then those voices of you, everything negative, don't have space in your mind. So listening, reading, inspirational material, very valuable. Also connecting to somebody. That just helps you get out of your mind, reach out to somebody, and then they'll probably end up lifting you up too. So I wanted to emphasize those two principles that you had shared, so valuable in helping somebody who might feel like they're in a rut, or if they leave this podcast and say, that was so good, and then tomorrow, oh, everything's bad again. We are talking about tools that say, if tomorrow is a chance that you will fall in the hole again, as it were, now you now know what to do. You can prepare and gather your spies. I love it.
Listen to me, Ben. I'm fired up right now. Okay. All right. So listen, here's the deal. Okay. If somebody listens to me and says, that felt good, and tomorrow they're going to go right back to doing the same old thing, turn us off right now. Just turn us off right now, because you're not hearing it, right? You're not really hearing that there is hope, right? This life is so much more than waking up in the morning mad I got to go to work, or mad I got to go to school, just going through the motions. I get there, I give a half-hearted job. I just get through the day so I can go home and veg out on Netflix and just do it all again tomorrow. Jesus came so that we may have life and have it abundantly. He means so much more than what we claim as our inheritance through a day-to-day basis. This is a big deal. Guys, this is it. This is the only game in town. We spend eternity in a place called heaven, but I'm talking about this side, this life. I'm breathing this air that God put breath in my lungs. The very essence of that breath is a call to action, a call to life, right? We have to stand up and stand for something, or we'll fall for anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you realize you are good enough, you have what it takes, and you start lining yourself up under a biblical worldview. All right, there's a difference now. There's a difference in the worldview and a biblical worldview, okay? Worldview is based off of your experiences, your culture, your background, your upbringing, the teachers you've had, the parents you've had, the media you've watched. All of this plays into your worldview, which is simply how the world works and how you see yourself in it. That's your worldview, okay? But the biblical worldview is so much more different, and it's so much more powerful, and it's so much more exhilarating and fun and life-giving if you'll let it be, if you'll stop simply going through the motions and get to a point where you say, okay, God, show me the way. You say I'm good enough. Now I'm going to put my trust and faith and belief in that. Now give me some testimony to stand on. Light my path. And he's going to do it. He's going to show up and show out. Ain't no doubt.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that's a perfect way to end what we're talking about. Whether it be your evening prayer or your morning prayer, we can always say, if by definition I am good enough, then like you said, you can ask for testimony, say, show me that I am good enough. Remind me that I am good enough. Or I can start or change my perspective to say, by definition, I am good enough. Therefore, these things, even if they were hard, even if they were struggles, do not mean I am not good enough. I am good enough. If you want to use that as an affirmation statement every time you brush your teeth, great. Whatever works. But that is definition of who you are. You are good enough.
That's right.
Okay, Dustin, thank you. This has been some fantastic stuff. I love the tools that you shared with us today. If there's anything else you'd like to tell us as a summary, great. Otherwise, tell us how we can connect with you on social media.
Yeah, man. So you can find me on Instagram at Dust214. That's DUST 214. I also have another Instagram titled Courage and Redemption, all ran together. It's another one that I have there. And also you can find me on Facebook at Dustin Amy, Aimee, that's my wife, Dustin Amy Rivenbark, or Courage and Redemption as well on Facebook. And also, if you're interested in life coaching, thanks to technology, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. We don't have to even be in the same state to go through coaching. Drivendevelopment.org. That's drivendevelopment.org. It'll tell you more about life coaching and how it can help you and be beneficial to you. Also, DustinRivenbark.com. I'm throwing them at you guys. So DustinRivenbark.com to learn more about my speaking. And also you can find a link to purchase my book, Courage and Redemption from iUniverse. So there you have it. If you missed it, rewind it back.
There you go. Perfect. Plenty of ways to reach out to you.
Man. Hey, you have no excuse. Dustin Rivenbark at yahoo.com. How about that?
Oh, There you go. And that's a huge reminder. Anybody who's listening today, if something resonated with you today and you want to learn some more, please reach out. The opportunities are out there, so now the responsibility is yours.
Yes.
Thank you again for everybody joining this podcast, Champions of Self. We love to learning from Dustin today, and we will see you next week.